Family and friends are in limbo as firefighters continue a painstaking search for victims of Friday's warehouse fire in Oakland. San Diego has a new plan for redirecting repeat offenders out of jail and into treatment.
I think it will be important to have parts of our vegetation that are more resilient and essentially more durable to these dry spells.
San Diego scientists are working on methods to cope with a warming climate. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. New tonight, more information about a deadly warehouse fire in Oakland. The number of people killed continues to rise. 36 is the latest number released by Alameda County authorities. We're also learning more about the victims. One was a 25-year-old man from Coronado. His name, Nick Gomez Hall. The fire broke out Friday at a building known as the Oakland Ghost Ship. Officials say there was a crowded party taking place. Fire crews still need to search more than half of the structure. Today, the prosecutor's office said investigators still have not determined if the tragedy is a crime. If so, charges could include murder. What's next for the Dakota Access Pipeline? Protesters got a victory when the Army Corps of Engineers denied a final permit, halting the project. But people at the center of the controversy say the fight to protect drinking water isn't over. Lee Patterson with Inside Energy brings us this report.
Water is life. It's become the rallying cry of the Standing Rock Sioux against a controversial crude oil pipeline project. And now that cry seems to have been heard. The Army Corps of Engineers has denied a request to build that pipeline underneath a certain section of the Missouri River and is instead considering alternate routes. The 1,200-mile Dakota Access Pipeline is meant to carry nearly 500,000 barrels of crude oil a day across 4 states. If completed as planned, the crude would have flowed underneath the Missouri River in North Dakota, close to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. The conflict has meant different things to different groups.
It's never been about this pipeline. It's always been about protecting water.
In the case of the Standing Rock Sioux, the pipeline would have crossed land that was once part of the Great Sioux Nation.
Our lands were illegally taken from us. Because of that, we should still have say on whether or not infrastructure projects are going to impact our people.
The pipeline company, Energy Transfer Partners, says the tribe was consulted, as does the federal government. In court documents, the Army Corps of Engineers outlines many dates that it contacted the tribe or tried to and just never heard back.
This was after great consultation with the Army Corps of Engineers, the offering up for consultation with also the Standing Rock Sioux, which they didn't choose to do.
Many tribes, including the Standing Rock Sioux, say that in this consultation process, they just aren't being heard.
I think they feel like consultation for too long has felt like just another box that has to be checked before a project is approved.
But that could be changing with this announcement from the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a win for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and for their concerns over water contamination and ancestral lands. For Inside Energy, I'm Lee Patterson.
That story was produced by Inside Energy, a reporting collaborative funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcast. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer met today with Charger Stadium point man Fred Mass. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has more.
The meeting itself was a bit of a surprise. It was the first between city officials and the Chargers since the team lost its Election Day bid to build a new stadium downtown. San Diego voters soundly rejected Measure C, a blueprint for building a stadium convention center complex in the city's East Village. That measure called for a major hike in the city's hotel tax to raise more than $1 billion for the plan. Measure C needed more than 2/3 vote to pass because it created a tax for a special purpose. The measure got just over 40% of the vote. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer says the meeting with Mass was short but cordial.
It's all about an ongoing dialogue, and I, as I've said very clearly after the last several weeks, look, I think there is momentum for a solution. Sometimes it doesn't happen on the first go round, but I've always believed that the team's best option is right here in San Diego.
Faulconer says he's confident that both sides can find a financial solution that makes sense. Chargers owner Dean Spanos says there will be no decision on the team's future until after the current football season. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
San Diego is working to keep chronic lawbreakers from repeatedly having run-ins with city agencies over misdemeanors. The offenders targeted by the program put a heavy demand on public resources. City Attorney Jan Goldsmith says the criminal justice system isn't well equipped to deal with such people because offenders don't face serious consequences.
SMART offers a different approach, an offer of meaningful help. Not just one night in a bed, but up to 2 years, as long as they are getting the needed treatment. Our part is to provide the consistency of a bed. Their part is to provide participation in treatment.
City officials say the population of chronic low-level criminals has climbed. Since state voters passed Proposition 47, that measure lowered penalties for certain crimes, creating many more misdemeanor lawbreakers. Some California lawmakers are stepping up to help people with low incomes in trouble with the law. They're set to introduce a bill to address the system's bail system. Lawmakers came together at the state capitol today to announce the plans. These lawmakers say the cash bail system unfairly punishes poor people. Currently, in most cases, defendants are required to post a fee up front before they're released. Authorities evaluate their ability to pay. Lawmakers say it's time to address the racial and economic disparities in this process.
Most people don't have the financial resources to cover some small amount of money. According to a report by the United States Federal Reserve just last year, 46% of Americans don't have $400 to pay for an emergency expense. And they would have to sell something or borrow something.
The 2017 legislative session starts Monday. Patients are suing a San Diego STEM company they claim charged them thousands of dollars for falsely advertised treatments that did not improve their health. KPBS science reporter David Wagner has the story.
La Jolla-based STEMgenics describes itself as a leader in stem cell therapy. Its website lists treatments for Alzheimer's disease, MS, and a number of other conditions. But UC San Diego stem cell scientist Larry Goldstein says there's no convincing scientific proof that stem cells can help people recover from any of these conditions.
The evidence is just not there. Medical scientists are working very hard to test therapies properly, but we're not there yet for a great many diseases that these companies claim to have therapies for.
STEMgenics is facing a lawsuit from patients who claim to have paid roughly $15,000 each for the company's treatments. The lawsuit alleges that the patients received no benefit from these treatments and were misled by the company's self-reported patient satisfaction statistics. A STEMgenics spokeswoman did not agree to be interviewed for this story, and she did not respond to questions submitted via email. David Wagner, KPBS News.
More information tonight about a project to speed up rail commutes along the coast. The North Coast Corridor construction project is set to begin this month. It will widen Railway's bridge to allow a second track to cross the San Elijo Lagoon. It's part of a bigger plan to double track 99% of the railway line from San Diego up the coast in the next 40 years. The project will eliminate the current practice of having trains wait for others to clear out of single track areas before they can proceed. Family and friends crowded the floors of the state Senate this afternoon as 9 of California's newest state senators were sworn into office. A choir of Sacramento area school children serenaded the crowded Senate chambers with our national anthem. During the ceremony, Senator De Leon made it clear California has no intentions of seceding from the U.S. Political unity will be California's only way forward.
More than ever, it's vital that we ensure that California continues to be America's exceptional example, a beacon of hope and opportunity. California is the last one.
Last month, a group of activists began a campaign to split from California from the United States. The effort, is known as Cal Exit, has gained traction among the state's voters who overwhelmingly cast their ballots for Democrat Hillary Clinton rather than President-elect Donald Trump. Survival or academic success? This is the question many California City College students face, according to a new report. San Diego State researchers surveyed thousands of students for the new Struggling to Survive, Striving Success report. Today, I sat down with the lead researcher, Dr. Luke Wood, to go over the alarming results. Luke, welcome and thanks for joining us. Let's jump right in and talk about the results of this report. 1/3 of all California community college students experience homelessness. That's surprising to me. Can you expand?
So it's not that they necessarily experience homelessness, but housing insecurities. So that can be homelessness, but it can also range from a student who's couch surfing to a student who's sleeping in their friend's closet or sleeping in their car, or really just concerned about where they're going to lay their head. We also looked in this report about food insecurities, which is really the threat of hunger and students not knowing where their next meal is going to come from.
Tell me about some of the other striking findings of this report.
So we found that a high percentage of students experience food insecurities and housing insecurities. We also found that when we look deeper into different populations, we see that a high percentage of students who are traditionally underserved, so particularly our Black and our Southeast Asian students, experience really high percentages of these challenges. So for example, we know that 1/3 of students experience housing challenges, but nearly half of the Black men in the sample reported experiencing those challenges. We also saw similar patterns among Southeast Asian, so Hmong, Cambodian, Laotian, Vietnamese students as well.
And how does this impact their ability to succeed in school and ultimately graduate? Do we know that?
Well, if you don't know where you're going to sleep or what you're going to eat, it's going to influence your success in college, because we're talking about basic needs. So if your basic needs aren't met, it's hard to focus in school. So we saw, in particular with students who experience food insecurities, major differences in their success. So we found that, for example, they tend to not be on track to achieve their goals. There are students who are more likely to report that they're going to drop out of college. They also have other challenges on campus in terms of feeling that they belong on campus, feeling like this is something that I should be doing with my life in terms of investing my time and my money and my energy in school. And then lastly, we saw that with this population, while they're using services on campus, which is important because we want them to get the necessary resources that they need, that those resources weren't helping them to address the challenges that they faced.
And how does this go beyond the starving college student, which many of us are familiar with, that it's typically a time for many to struggle? So how is this beyond that?
So what we're talking about can be inclusive of the typical starving college student, but what we think this is doing, this report, is revealing a much darker reality, and that's that some students are are really facing a challenge in being able to eat. So for example, in my own experience, when I was a student in college, this was a challenge that I faced. So I remember going days at a time without eating because I simply didn't have any money to buy food. And I think that's the same kind of challenge that we're seeing with these college students, except we're seeing a much higher percentage than we ever expected are facing these challenges.
So we have the data now. What's next?
So what's next is awareness. So we're really trying to promote awareness of this challenge. So we know that some colleges have become attuned to the fact that, hey, students aren't knowing where to sleep and they don't know, where they're going to get their next meal. So that's the first part, is creating awareness so that colleges can be responsive to it, because they can't address a problem that they don't know exists. But then beyond that, it's about creating food pantries on campus. It's about creating food vouchers that are available to students. It's about partnering with community organizations who might already be engaged in this work, but then bringing them onto campus and helping to directly connect a student who's experienced a challenge to that community organization that can provide that student with support.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Researchers at San Diego's Salk Institute have identified several molecular keys that may help unlock understanding about how plants handle environmental stress. This could help develop plants capable of thriving during droughts. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
These small green trays of plants are far more captivating to researchers than the view outside this seaside greenhouse.
Can we get the seeds?
Yeah.
Is it already seeds in here? No, that's too young. Yeah.
Each one of them is called a seed pod.
Carol Huang and Lian Song are picking apart the insides of this hardy, quick-growing relative of the mustard plant. Arabidopsis, or thale cress as it's commonly called, is one of the first plants to have its genome sequenced. Much of that work was done here at Salk. Song pulls the flower of a mature plant under a dissecting microscope and leans in with a pair of tiny tweezers.
It's very tricky because we want to find the open flowers, which only has a tiny bit of white color at the top. And under the microscope, we will open and get rid of the outer cycles, such as the sepals and the petals, and to expose the stigma in the center. And then we will pick another flower and get the pollen from the other flower to pollinate the flower we just exposed.
Song and her colleague have spent 5 years growing countless generations of this plant so they can pull them apart and learn how they work.
In theory, we can extract all kinds of things, from the proteins, the nucleic acid, to metabolites. And in this particular project we focus on the connection of the proteins with the DNA.
They were particularly interested in clusters of proteins called transcription factors. Essentially, they're molecular switches that respond to stress. The team created a slurry of genetic material and introduced the plant hormone ABA. Plants produce this adrenaline-type material when they need to respond to harsh environmental conditions like drought. Researcher Carol Huang says the team measured which molecular switches activated.
By pulling down the molecular switches and along with their followers, we can figure out what these molecular switches are controlling in the plant.
She likens the process to discovering a social network like Twitter. She says identifying the players and what they do allows researchers to map the network.
Before you know what the components are and what connections are there, you don't know whether you should manipulate the gene or manipulate the molecular switches. It's our hope that by comprehensively mapping these connections, now we know which ones we can control more efficiently.
And there is hope that the Arabidopsis plant might help scientists develop more drought-tolerant species. Huang says different species of plants likely share the same biological building blocks.
Either transfer the knowledge or transfer the experimental method to figure out what are the molecular switches that controlling the thousands of genes that the plant needs to respond to low water conditions.
And that has significant real-world implications. Dan Kayan is a climate researcher at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. He says the research is overwhelmingly clear. The global climate is warming.
As climate warms, dry spells are going to become, in some sense, more impactful because you have the additive stress from increased heat as well as the lack of water.
Kayan says the local climate will likely continue to be volatile with dry spells punctuated by occasional stormy wet periods, but he predicts significant impacts on regions that provide San Diego's water. The Colorado River Basin will likely get drier, and the Sierra snowpack will shrink as temperatures climb. Kayan says coping with that change will require a variety of strategies.
I think it will be important to have parts of our vegetation that are more resilient and essentially more durable to these dry spells.
The work done at the Salk Labs helps illuminate how plants manage stress like drought, but that work is far from done. Researcher Lian Song says understanding the Arabidopsis plant is only a starting point.
I would expect a lot of the knowledge can be readily transferred to those species. And for the distant relatives, such as rice and such as corns, there will still be quite a few things in common.
And that could be the big payoff for biologists. If this work leads to more drought-tolerant food crops, dealing with climate change impacts may be a lot less daunting. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
It's now possible to peer into the future and see which areas of San Diego County could be underwater due to sea level rise, 1, 3, maybe even 5 feet, which some residents could see in their lifetimes. Ingrid Lobet of our media partner iNewsSource has this week's news and numbers.
The nonprofit science group Climate Central has created a series of interactive mapping tools that allows you to input any level of sea level rise you wish and see how the water covers the landscape. This scenario is many generations in the future. Of course, it can't foresee storms and king tides, but it can show you where the most people are exposed to future higher sea levels. In San Diego County, that's zip code 92109, Pacific Beach and Mission Beach. You can even generate custom reports by legislative or congressional district. For KPBS partner iNewsSource, I'm Ingrid Lobet.
You can see the different flooding scenarios and check out FEMA's flood map at inewssource.org. Good news for skiers. The Sierra Mountain is having its wettest October and November in 3 decades. Thanksgiving weekend alone brought in 25 inches of snow. That means plenty of powder for nearby resorts. Another storm, in fact, is expected to push through Wednesday night and bring several more inches of snow. For San Diego, cooler days and slightly warmer nights to start this work week compared to last. Shanae Shocker has tonight's forecast.
Across much of the west, we are seeing a big dip in the jet stream and an area of low pressure, and that's bringing a lot cooler weather off to our north and into our northeast as well. Lots of snowfall into the northwest, but here along the Southern California coast in San Diego County, we do have a couple of clouds straggling through, but we are seeing temperatures about 5 degrees below normal through tomorrow because of this area of low pressure. So 55 degrees for tonight's low, as well as some increasing cloud cover. Around the rest of the county, we'll see that cloud cover increase all the way out into Mount Laguna. We're at 37 degrees here. Out towards Ramona, 41, and Oceanside, 48. So our nights are slightly more mild. Now, on Tuesday, with this onshore flow, that's going to bring us some cooler conditions as well as some gustier winds into the mountains as well as the deserts. Now, these winds are going to be just below advisory level, so we're not going to see any advisories, but heading into late week, we'll have an area of high pressure return, keeping things nice and dry, and then we'll have that offshore flow come back, and we'll head back to highs right around normal as well. Some gustier winds out towards the coast. So into the latter half of this week, we see our temperatures rise back up to pretty normal conditions into Thursday, 69. We'll stay in the upper 60s in through Saturday. We'll have mostly sunny conditions throughout the rest of the week here, and temperatures for our lows going to stay very mild into the 40s. Wednesday morning will be right around 39 degrees for their low. Inland, we're also seeing that cooling condition for our Tuesday with those low clouds breaking as the morning wears on. And then into Wednesday and Thursday, we'll continue to see a warming trend and we'll reach back up into the low 70s for the end of our week and into the beginning of next Saturday. 70 degrees for our low, variable clouds as well. Plenty of sunshine to go around and our overnight lows fairly comfortable. Into the mountains, we are going to be seeing some breezy conditions for our Tuesday into Wednesday as well. And our temperatures here, they are going to be in the 40s for our highs towards the middle of this week. As we wrap up into the end of the week, into Thursday and Friday, we'll climb back up into the 50s, have more clouds than sun as we head into Saturday. And last but not least, into the deserts, once again, some breezier conditions in towards Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll see some sunny conditions as well. 67 for our low this week on Wednesday, so that's going to be a pretty decent day out there. Thursday into Saturday will be in the 70s, climbing into the mid-70s come Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm Shanae Shocker.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, a look at the phenomenon behind Art Basel, the enormous high-end art fair in Miami. That's Monday on the PBS News Hour.
Space tourism is a step closer to becoming a reality. Virgin Galactic has finished its first glide flight for its newest spaceship. These are images from the test flight. It took place Saturday in the Mojave Desert. First comes these glided flights, next rocket-powered ones. This is the second spacecraft for Virgin Galactic. The company plans to develop a fleet for leisure space travel. The San Diego State Aztecs are Las Vegas bound. The football team beat out Wyoming for its second straight conference title. This will be the Aztecs' 7th straight bowl appearance, an SDSU record. They play Houston. The matchup is December 17th at UNLV. The game is being televised nationally. Congratulations. Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, Native Americans in southern Utah hope President Obama will make sacred site, Bears Ears, a national monument before he leaves. On Midday Edition, it's getting urgent. Imperial Valley officials are demanding the state set a clear policy by the end of the year to restore the Salton Sea. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.